This is Uncommonly Remarkable. We have surprisingly casual discussions about the lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. Think of this podcast as an opportunity to learn something new and to pick up on an entrepreneurial tip or two through open conversation. I'm Artis Beatty. I'm a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Welcome to the show. What if everything you believe about self-sabotage, success, and healing is wrong? In this episode, I'm joined by Ryan Christensen, a former intelligence officer turned belief engineer who helps high achievers break free from subconscious conflict using hypnosis. We dive deep into why your emotions aren't broken, how your subconscious is actually trying to protect you, and what it takes to finally feel whole. From psychedelics to trauma framing to weaponized autism and emotional truth, this is a raw, unfiltered look into the real work of self-discovery. If you've ever felt like success isn't enough, then this one's for you. Ladies, gentlemen, all you remarkable people, please welcome Ryan to the show. Ryan, welcome to the show. I am excited to have you here. I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation. There's a lot of subject matter for us to talk about, and I think a lot of it's relevant to the majority of our audience. So thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
So, it's really hard sometimes for me to find a really good place to start because there's so much and I'm kind of excited about it all. And right. I want to make a nice, relevant, easy to follow story without jumping all over the place. So sure. I think what we'll do is talk a little bit about who you are and what you do. Mm-hmm. And as we start to talk about that, we will get to go back and maybe build on how you got here. That sound
sure.
fair?
Sounds great to me.
Cool. So why don't you introduce yourself just a little bit? And the cool thing for me is thinking about this and hypnosis because it's just for me something very interesting and maybe something I've not had a lot of experience with. And so that's, I think, is fantastic.
Outstanding. So the way I talk about things these days is that I'm a belief engineer and I help entrepreneurs and professionals finally become the person they were always meant to be. And that's pretty much it. I author the book Winner Peace, How to End Inner Conflict, Make Success Inevitable. And it's all about getting every part of you on the same page, right? Finally fixing all that conflict and all that tension and all that friction between you and your mind and the rest of you, the deep subconscious, so you can actually be a whole person.
That friction between you and your mind, I think that's one of the things that everybody deals with at some point to some level. And I think some of that friction is healthy in that it helps you kind of understand who you are and where you are. But there can be a point where it's preventative. It's not letting you get to where you'd like to be. 100%. When you're thinking about that, how do people understand when it's healthy versus when it's really actually beginning to cause a problem?
Well, that really kind of comes down to are the results that you're getting in the world the ones you should be getting, given who you think you are and what you're doing, right? Because if you write about who you are, if you write about what you're doing, if you write about how the world works, you should be getting a certain answer. If A plus B equals C, that's how it's supposed to work. You put A in, you put B in, and you get F, something ain't right. That's just simply how it goes, right? And quite frankly, the more work you have to do to manage your mindset, your emotional state, the bigger problem you really have. Right. If you're meditating half an hour every day, journaling, doing the cold plunge and the, walking and getting your circadian rhythm and doing the supplements and doing the biohacking and lifting like 7 times a week, you're probably doing a hell of a lot to just manage your emotional state, manage your level of stress and manage your emotions, which means that those things are not on your side the way you need them to be. And the thing I'll drop in is this. Your mind is always on your side. It is always trying to help you live the best possible life it can, given what it understands and how it views the world. There is no such thing as self-sabotage. It doesn't exist, at least not from my perspective. If you're not getting what you want, you're getting what you need, right? There's a deeper need that's being fulfilled, right? And quite often that need is simply protecting us from emotional pain. Because if that gets too high, we don't want to be here anymore.
It's interesting that you describe it as taking the cold plunge, doing the long walk, meditating, journaling, because all of those things, if you were to pick up a phone and scroll through social media, that's really what influencers portray, right?
Yes.
Like, they're spending some part of their day meditating. They are, they're walking this and these long miles. Like, you don't really know how they've got this time during the day to do that.
Exactly.
And, and it seems like there's this push to escape from, and those things allow that escape. And,
Exactly.
to hear you explain, it doesn't feel like that is necessarily the way we're designed to, or we should be. That's not what we should be aiming for.
Well, should is a very interesting word, because should depends a lot on what you're trying to do and how, right? If I'm trying to simply numb the pain, that's a beautiful technique, right? The idea, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, the idea of like, you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions. It's not bad. Giving yourself some distance from that stuff so you got some space to do something, not a bad idea. The problem I see is we use that as the sole solution, right? It's like, okay, I don't feel bad anymore. Cool. I fixed the problem. It's like, no, that's not actually what's going on, right? There's a reason you felt that way. There's a reason those thoughts came up. There's a reason they keep coming up time and time again. And if all you do is numb the pain out, then you're not doing yourself any favors, because that problem, whatever it is still down there. And your mind will continue to try and solve that problem. But if you tell it to shut up and stop talking to you, which is what those thoughts and emotions are, the communications from your mind as far as what it sees in the world and how it needs your help. If you tell it to shut up, it's just going to stop asking you and just do things on its own, which is where things tend to bite us in the ass, right? We're rocking along, doing our thing, and all of a sudden we're doing some stupid stuff, right? Right? You got these guys who are incredibly, incredibly successful. They got everything in the world you need, and their relationships are a mess. Right? Or you're trying to 24/7, 365, you don't work, gym, home, repeat, and you just don't have a life outside of that. Right? Or you're doing all this stuff to build status and you still feel empty. It's like, I'm sorry, you're just not, you just don't, you haven't taken the deep look inside that you need to. And I get why. It's freaking terrifying. Quite frankly, all the stuff we need to fix down there are things we've been trying to prove wrong from the beginning. So to own that those are still true in spite of all the work we're doing, man, that's a heavy lift.
And it's one of those things that you have to come to a realization that, I think you have to realize that you're not happy, or that you're not in the place that you want to be. And sometimes that's very difficult, given there are things that you have looked to achieve or that you are presently achieving. And you can actually turn to those things and use them as motivation rather than actually getting to an end goal of happy. Yeah.
And an end goal of happy, maybe not the best word, but for me, it's all about authenticity. It's about being who I truly am, right? And that's not necessarily about, self-love and happiness and so forth and so on, because from my perspective, I want to feel every end of the emotional spectrum. Depths of hell, heights of ecstasy. I want every single bit, because that's what life is. You're feeling bad because you're running up against challenges, right? You've got problems to solve. If you're not feeling bad ever, then you're not challenging yourself. You don't have any problems. It means you're probably playing small, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at things like, man, how to put it? If the goal is authenticity, if the goal is being a whole person, then what the problem that we face is, and I talk about this in the book, I call this the treadmill, right? There's two traps we get into when we've experienced a lot of negative emotion when we're young: the cage and the treadmill. Cage is really simple. Everybody knows what it looks like. You're boxed in by your pain, your fear, and your insecurity. Everything you really want to go for in life, it's just too dangerous. It's just too, the price of failure is too high. So you're stuck, right? The other one is trickier, right? You got that Batman origin story, right? But you found that way out, whatever that happened to be, like academics, athletics, entrepreneurship. For me, I joined the military, went down the intelligence path, right? You're doing what you love. You're doing something you're good at, right? You're having a great old time. You're getting all kinds of rewards. Everybody's telling you how awesome you are. You look at a guy like Alex Ramosi, man, how do I become you? David Goggins, man, how do I become you? Man, you're just like kicking ass, taking names. Every single signal from the outside world tells you you're doing it exactly right. So it's real hard to sit there and say, something ain't right. And oftentimes we're doing that, to prove those feelings wrong. Feel like we're not good enough? Fair enough. I'm going to succeed. I'm going to prove how good I am, right? From the outside in. So it's real hard to admit that all that work still hasn't proved it wrong. But unfortunately, there's a principle in hypnosis we call the critical factor. And basically what it says is that your unconscious mind judges true and false based on what it already believes, right? So when someone calls you a jerk and that hits, why? Because it matches something down there. When somebody says you're awesome and you still don't feel anything, why? Because it don't match what's down there. So if the belief is I'm not good enough, if the belief is there's something wrong with me, can you prove it wrong from the outside in? No. Which is why, like, there's a guy named Andrew Wilkinson, beautiful example. He wrote a book called Never Enough. It's his journey from being a barista making $6 an hour to being a billionaire, right? And he got there, because he grew up poor. He's like, outstanding. I just need to solve the money problem. Everything will be fine. So he becomes a billionaire, and he's sitting there looking around and says, nope, I'm just as insecure, as anxious as when I started. He looks around at friends, also billionaires, same thing. Multi-billionaires, same thing. 100 million, same thing. 10 million, same thing. If $1 billion is not enough to prove you good enough, that ain't how that works. And I don't care who says otherwise.
Wow. So what is it about hypnosis that, well, maybe for people who are not familiar, because
Sure.
most brushes with hypnosis are the things you see on TV, or you may go to a mentalist show, and you kind of see people, they're being hypnotized, they're maybe doing weird things, they're falling asleep when they're pointed at, etc. So can you talk about the mystique around hypnosis and explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So hypnosis, fundamentally, the simplest way I can explain it is it's a set of techniques that give us more access to your unconscious mind. That's it, right? It gets you in an altered mental state where we open up that door to your subconscious mind. Now, the art of it is what you do when you're down there, right? If you talk about the guys up on stage, interesting thing about a stage hypnotist is before he even gets somebody up on stage, he's working the audience, right? And he's looking to see who's responding. Looks to see who wants to play the game, right? So he selects some people that really look like they want to play the game. Come on up here. And he does what? Gets them down there, start testing them some more. You guys are really responding. Outstanding. You are my 5 people that really want to play the game. Outstanding. Let's go. They want to be up there. They know exactly that. They know they're going to be doing some stupid stuff. They know they're going to be looking like a fool. They do this all for the show, right? So the thing about the hypnosis that people are worried about is like, oh my God, I'm going to control you. Oh my God, I control you. It's like, no, I can't. If you don't want to go there, it's a voluntary process. I'm leading you to someplace. If you don't want to go, I can't take you there. We're down there and you don't want to do something, you don't have to. You want to bring yourself out, you can. And I've had that happen with several clients where it's like, we just get to a place where like, I can't be there, out I come. Fair enough, right? But the other thing is that if that door's open, talking about things in terms of being more suggestible or more persuadable, right? Talked about that critical factor. What hypnosis does is it bypasses that. It's not that you say yes easier. It's that you don't automatically say no. So there's time and space to play, right? And you can do all kinds of things with that suggestion-based stuff, right? Like stopping smoking. You can have somebody stop smoking in a single session. The American Lung Association actually has a list of hypnotists on their website that gets you, that's their entire focus is helping people stop smoking, right? Same thing for weight loss. Really good for that. Pain control. Hypnosis has been used for pain control from the very beginning, right? If you look at Kate Middleton, wife of Prince William, for all 3 of her kids, she used hypnosis during childbirth for pain control. It's called hypnobirthing for all 3 of her kids. Access to the best medical care in the world used hypnosis, right? All kinds of really cool stuff you can do there. But there's limits to that, which is why I do things a little bit different.
And are all people susceptible to hypnosis?
I would say that the odds of somebody being like completely unable to go in that place, very, very small, right? I'd say for like 95, 98% of people you can. The question is, do you want to? Do you want to play the game? If you don't want to play the game, I can't take you there. You want to play the game? We can take you there. Might take a bit of work, right? If you got some fears around control, if you got fears around having to do, create things a certain way, you got anxiety, whatever it happens to be, sometimes we got to do some work ahead of time, right? I've had a few clients where we've had to do a couple of sessions, just kind of like working through whatever their fears are, working through whatever their issues are, so they could actually get to a point where they could like let go and allow that process to happen. But it's just a matter of like, do you want to play the game? At least in my perspective.
And so as you think about where you are today, how did you start to think about hypnosis as a way to access the subconscious in a way that could be used to help people understand emotion and understand what emotion is doing? Like, because until I ran into you and started reading more about what it is that you do, I'd really never touched anything that said that that approached this from this way.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating combination of being autistic, spending 23 years in the intelligence community, and then having to save my own ass, quite frankly. Sorry for the language, but it's, 2019, 2020, the way I'd kept myself alive for a very long time, because I gave up on life young, was essentially, I'm going to go save the world. I'm going to be Batman, right? Because if, Batman's life sucks, but it's a really good thing he's around. So there's a reason for me to stick around if I'm serving this greater good, protecting people. Mm-hmm. And that worked up until about 2019, 2020, when I'm about 45 years old, because I'm realizing the world does not want to be saved. So clearly I'm in the wrong line of business. And now my reason to keep going no longer works, which is a problem, right? So that's when I really went to war. It's like, I got to figure this thing out. And I was in a couple of men's groups in 2019 through like 2022. And one of the guys there was a hypnotist talking about toxic shame and emotional baggage. Well, got some of that, raised Catholic. Did a couple of sessions with him and just felt lighter, Carrying around 50 pounds of stuff, you get rid of 20 pounds, everything's just easier, right?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Here's an interesting tool to play with. So I got certified as a hypnotist in February 2020, did a lot more training in April 2020 is when I started my business, right? And I was really focusing on limiting beliefs, because what you believe about who you are and how the world works determines what you need to do to survive and thrive, right? Perfect. So let's take a look at what those belief structures are and how they're holding you back. And at the time, I was looking at it in terms of kind of like the balance in the scale we use to decide whether we're going to do something or not. Got good stuff on one side, bad stuff on another, right? And the typical approach is like throw more good stuff on the good side, right? Pile up as much stuff as you can. And eventually that's going to tip the scales, right? Well, sometimes the thing that's on the other side of the scale is so heavy, you can't outweigh it. If the thing on the other side of the scale is, if I do this, I will die, good luck trying to outweigh that sucker, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think about emotions as pain, and if the pain gets too high, you don't want to be here. And these things are sources of emotional pain, like that's a real thing. So if we can take that off the scale, heck of a lot easier to move. Probably have enough weight on the other side already. So instead of trying to add more good stuff, why not just take away a bunch of the bad stuff?
Fair.
So that's where I started, and did really good. And then the exploration I did, tried pretty much everything between 2019 and 2023 to fix myself, like all of it, like pretty much everything but acupuncture, right? And as I went along, I realized that all of it helps, but nothing of it actually fixes you, right? And because I'm autistic, I can't pretend that better equals fixed. And if I can't find a way to fix myself, I can't get what I want in life. This ain't worth it. I'm done. Mm-hmm. So I had to get digging. So it's like, okay, cool. Let me go ahead and sit down and reverse engineer all this stuff, figure out how it actually works. What are the limits? Because nobody talks about the limits of these different tools, do they? What it works for, what it doesn't, right? When you hit those diminishing returns, when it's time to move on. And what I realized is like, okay, it's down in the subconscious mind. Only got two real tools to play with, hypnosis and psychedelics. Psychedelics to take you on a beautiful ride, show you a lot of stuff, but there's massive limits in terms of what you can do to change things when you're down there. So all the integration work is conscious, right? How do I move through the world? What decisions do I make now that I understand all this stuff? But it's still down there, right? So using hypnosis to try and explore what those beliefs are and how they're constructed really gives us an edge. Because how do you take something apart if you don't know how it's built? How do you prove something wrong if you don't know why it's right? But if every answer I need is in the back of your head, and I've got a tool to get down there, and I spent 23 years in intelligence trying to figure out people, stuff that people don't want me to know, like, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. Right? And the thing is, like, fundamentally, if your mind is trying to help you, it wants to help you understand. Right? But you got to have access to a place where the answers really are, and you got to ask the right questions. And the thing that I realized, and this is the real key, is I realized that we're looking at the world through two lenses simultaneously all the time. We're looking for the trees and the forest, left brain and right brain. Okay. The left brain, that rational mind, is what? It's focused on details. It's focused on how things work. Individual events, problems, systems, traumas, whatever you want to call it, right? The emotional mind, your right side of your brain, is looking at the forest. It's looking at patterns over time. It's looking at narratives that run through things. So you're seeing two completely different perspectives, which is why you can think one thing and feel another. And the interesting thing is, they're both 100% correct. They are both 100% true and correct at all times, period, given their perspective, given the systems of belief that they're using to analyze the world. So if you simply assume that what you feel is right and figure out why it's right, now you got something to play with.
That's a very profound way to look at things, especially when you start to think about the mind and where you just went and saying, that it kind of, it knows the answer. It's interesting to think though that, and maybe it's actually the same thought. The mind knows the answer, but it's also is trying to protect you or itself at some point. Because if you think about people who've had some significant trauma, sometimes they forget pieces of that that trauma.
Yeah.
And that is protecting them from having to relive it. So how do you think about that piece?
When you're looking at things like that, I look at memories from a different perspective. Okay. The way I see it is your mind is bringing up this thing because it's trying to figure out how to deal with something. Okay. If you're any day you're walking through life, right? Your mind is basically saying, when you feel one of these negative emotions, is saying, hey, this is how I'm seeing the situation. This is the kind of challenge I'm facing. This is the kind of problem I need you to help me solve. Right? So every emotion that it gives you is a different kind of problem it's trying to get you some help with. Okay. And what it's saying is like, given what I know about who I am, given how I know what I know about the world, how do I navigate this particular situation? Okay.
Okay.
If you're looking at a memory, essentially saying like, hey, I still haven't figured this out. Okay. But this event is not the thing it cares about. It looks at patterns over time. Any particular individual event, no matter how bad in and of itself, isn't really important. Those really big traumas are just the straw that broke the camel's back, but that camel had 1,000 pounds on it already before that happened. This is an example of a kind of problem it's trying to solve. So
that makes sense.
Okay, this happened. Great. What do I believe about who I am as a result of this in that moment? Right? Got abused. Fair enough. Right? Couldn't stop it. Fair enough. Easy to believe, I'm powerless, I'm weak, I can't protect myself. Easy to believe that it's my fault, that I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Right? Makes perfect sense you're growing up. Right? Well, that stays true from there on out because it's based on a pattern it saw. And it's still seeing evidence of that thing playing out now. So it's still right. So the thing is, how do we change these conclusions that it drew from the events that happened?
That's right.
Okay.
That totally makes sense. Perfect. So you have a set of events, and you end up having an outcome from those events, and it actually creates a behavior based on those events because those events are familiar. So a familiar event.
Sort of. Like, I don't necessarily know if it's familiar because, again, we don't know what it's actually looking at. We don't actually know the pattern of the problem.
I see.
We don't actually know what the problem is it's trying to solve. Not exactly, right? Because it's not necessarily telling us that. So it's like, okay, the conclusions that you were powerless, weak, can't protect myself, my fault. Fair enough. Can we play with these? Yes, we can. You're abused. Can't stop it. There's no way you can stop yourself from getting beat as a kid. I'm sorry. It's just not possible. Right?
Right.
But here's the thing. If you think about guys like, say, Martin Luther King or Gandhi, their superpower really is just being able to take everything the world could throw at them, just saying, what else you got? Right? Just being able to endure. And just doing that, they changed the course of history, brought empires to their knees, right? Does that sound powerless and weak to you?
Not at all.
That's power. That's strong. That's resilience. That's a tenaciousness, right? And that's fundamentally exactly what you did. We talk about fight and flight, but there's actually 5 different survival responses, not 2. There's fight and flight. There's freeze, right? Hiding. Fawn, which is that surrender, begging sort of thing, right? The last one, nobody talks about. Flop. 2 guys are fighting in the schoolyard, right? Big crowd gathers around him. One of them starts to lose. What happens? Tries to get away. Can't. Hits the ground. Curls up in the ball. Takes the beating because he's got no other options. Right? Protect yourself as best you can because that's the only thing you can do. And that's exactly what you did. And it worked. Right? It worked. You're still here. You're still breathing. I'm not saying it was a particularly good time, but like it worked. Right? And if the world is trying to destroy you, at the end of it all, you're still standing. Who won?
You did. You're still here.
Exactly. So now you're not powerless and weak and can't protect yourself. No, you protected yourself exactly the way you needed to. You were strong and resilient to get yourself through that. That's a completely different conclusion. So what about it's your fault? Well, if your dad's abusive, that guy's got issues, to put it mildly, that he never deal with, right? And somebody's messed up like that, they just can't deal with the world the normal way. So you just take out their crap on everyone around you, right? Which means it didn't actually have to do with anything you did or didn't do. You're just collateral damage. And if you think about it, never did matter what you did or didn't do. It was happening no matter what. Whatever he said was just an excuse. So if he's just taking out his crap on everything around you, does it have to do with anything about you at all? No. Strong, resilient, did exactly right. Nothing to do with you.
And so as you start to explore these things, and obviously there's lots of work that you've done or that you need to do for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine that. Self-hypnosis, I would imagine, is not really a thing. But so how
it is?
Is it?
Yeah.
How do you have all of this insight and have work for yourself and get it done? Because it seems so impossible.
Unfortunately, it is. Here's the problem. This is what sucks. Oh my God, this is probably the most frustrating part of my entire journey. You can't do this particular thing on yourself. You can't. Right? Self-hypnosis is a thing. You can 100% drop yourself in there, but it's more like opening up the door and dropping stuff in. You can't do work. Why? Because you'd have to be conscious and unconscious at the same time. That ain't a thing. You can't do brain surgery on yourself. Doesn't matter even how much you know about what's going on there. Right? And the other piece is if you're fundamentally in conflict with your mind, it doesn't trust you. So why is it going to let you change it? And if all the changes you want to make are to let you do stuff that it thinks are bad, wrong, or dangerous in some way, why the heck is it going to let you change it? It won't. So the amount of change you can do on your own is fundamentally limited. But that's okay. It's like your consciousness is the CEO of your mind. Your unconscious mind is senior management on down. They're all union. They're on strike. Labor negotiations are broken down. Can't fire them, right? Can't get rid of that thing. Doesn't matter, right? So what do? You get a third-party negotiator to come in and sit both sides down and say, all right, let's hash this out. Let's have a negotiation. That's what it's all about. Open the door, going down and say, okay, what is the real problem? What do you really need? Great. Can we negotiate a new solution? Can we negotiate a new set of conclusions? Can we negotiate a new truth to operate from? And I can't do that, which means that every time I knew exactly what was wrong, knew exactly how to fix it, and I'd hire some other guy to fix it for me. And you're talking about like how your mind will protect you from stuff. Oh my God, this just happened like a month and a half ago. Right. So I get people to this very specific place, and every time, like along the way, like I would fix this stuff in people. Right. And 6 months later, I'm like, crap, I haven't fixed that yet. Right. So I'm in a place where I thought I've done all this work because I understand it all, help these people. No, I was actually working with a lady about a month and a half ago, and she was like doing some subconscious work. She just kept on dragging me. So just stuck me there. I'm like, oh crap, I haven't done this yet. I haven't actually done the negotiation piece that I need to get myself off this freaking treadmill and out of the strap. Because I haven't had anybody who had the capacity to help me do that. And my mind couldn't let me know that I wasn't fixed yet until I had that kind of solution. Because if I wasn't fixed yet, couldn't get what I needed, I'm out.
Yeah.
So it let me live a lie for about 1.5 years until I could find the right person to help me fix it.
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, like that's brilliant. Like, screw you. Also brilliant, right? But fundamentally, what was it doing? It's doing exactly what it should to help me. It's doing exactly what it should to keep me going, which is exactly what it's supposed to do, which means it fundamentally had my best interest at heart. But it also knew the danger of me knowing that truth and having no solution. So it said, all right, this is off the table. We're just going to let you live a lie until we have a solution. And as soon as that solution presents itself, boom, here you go. Right? Found out June of 2023 that in addition to having ADHD, I have bipolar disorder and autism. Right? And it wasn't until after I got that diagnosis that I remembered that the first time I went in my life, I was 9 years old.
Wow.
Right? I'm growing up in Kansas in the 70s and 80s. I've got autism. I've got IQ over 145. The world works just fine for everybody else, and not for me. I will never get what I need because I can't figure it out. Nobody knows what's wrong with me. Nobody can help me. I'm as well. So I just knew very, very early, like I will never get what I need. And therefore I will suffer for the rest of my life. But I got to decide how long that was. And there's some power and agency in that, right? And my mind said, no, you're not allowed. And it just dragged me through this life, kicking and screaming for 48, 49 goddamn years. But that's
Wow.
okay, because fundamentally, all I needed was time. It was buying time until I could figure it out. And it worked,
So,
because here I am.
well, and so that's one of the things that I wonder about.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think in general, we draw a lot of, or at least some of us draw a lot of how we are perceived from social cues, things that we kind of take in from being in a room with people or interacting with people.
Yep.
And that can be a plus or a minus, right? Because if you are reading social cues that are playing into the way you feel about yourself, to go back and say not enough, not good enough, etc., then those are things that help to amplify the feeling that you already have, right?
Okay.
Is there, I almost wonder with autism, there's, you don't read social cues exactly the same way, right?
More
Do you
like-
think it had a plus or a minus, or did it affect the way you perceived yourself, or no?
Oh man, mixed bag at best. I'll tell you that. You're right. I was talking to a guy about 2 years ago. He's asking me about kind of what my experience is, and talking about how like I don't really see the details, right? Like I see patterns really easily, right? But I can't see a lot of the detail and nuance to the way you guys act. Can't. Right? It's like I'm blind to it. He goes, "Oh, I totally understand what you mean." It says I'm colorblind, right? So because he can't perceive the colors the same way y'all do, he sees the structure and the pattern so much easier. He's like, "Why do you not see this? You guys, because you guys see it, because that's what you're cueing off of. You miss the larger patterns." But I see the patterns because I can't get lost in details. But losing the details means you guys can't tell me what's really going on. You're like, here's the employee's manual. Here's the rules. Here's how things work. And I take that thing and I say, okay, I do X, Y, Z. And here it's like, nope, that's not how it works. What about, nope, that's not how it works. All right, cool. Chuck that sucker out there. The hell's actually going on? Right. And that's how I've navigated my life. If there's a pattern, there's something that drives it. It's got a purpose. There's a machine that does that. There's an algorithm, black box that converts A to B. Fair enough. All I do is watch enough A get turned into B, and I can figure out how that sucker works. Which means I basically turn my brain into a machine that reverse engineers anything and everything around me to figure out how it works, so I could actually figure out how to navigate life. And then I weaponized it with 23 years in the intelligence community. So this is weaponized autism, right? And definitely downsides and upsides, right? Where like I could be a social chameleon pretty well, right? Because I could figure out how that thing worked and figure out what I need to show the world. But I had a I had a major depressive episode in 2009 because it's like, it was just all too much. I couldn't handle it anymore, right? I just felt like scattered and broken and just like fragmented. Like who I was like fragmented, like being 100% different people in like completely different situations, right? And so I worked through that with psychologists, and he really helped me sort of understand that, kind of put myself back together. And then, once I understood about the autism, I'm like, oh, that's autistic masking. Got it. Right? Having that diagnosis, man, my life made a whole lot of sense. But I also had to sit there and go, okay, everything that I thought about who I was is a complete lie. I was wrong. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Right? So I had to do some work to sit down and kind of look through my life and say, okay, what is this really now that I understand what I am? Right? And when you're looking at trying to figure out who you are, the thing that always kind of amused me, or like kind of like makes me laugh sometimes, is everybody's trying to figure out who they are from the outside in. Looking at how other people react to them, right? Looking at, am I checking this? Great. But you can see yourself from the inside out. You know exactly what you are in there. Right? So why are you trying to figure out from the outside in if you already know what the answer is? Right? The answer to that question is you don't like what you see from the inside out. So you're trying to figure out, who else can I be? And then trying to see, does everybody else agree that this is who you are? Because if everybody else agrees that this is who you are, then maybe you are, right? Alex Hermosa, building a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are, right? Not who you are, that you are who you say you are. I want to be this. Give me this, because I don't like this, right? But the problem is the truth is always there, right? Your mind judges true or false based on what our beliefs, which is why that stuff still sneaks in. Because it's still true down there.
And so if people are like listening to this and they're thinking, man, a lot of this rings true. I'm starting to think about where I am. Like, what are the first steps, and when should they decide to call a guy like you to help out?
Man, so there's a great little quote I heard a while back. It said, "Success in life is directly proportional to the amount of truth you can handle about yourself." Right? It's like, oh, that's a little too real. That's a little too real. But fundamentally, like that's actually one of the biggest advantages of being autistic, is that I can't lie to myself. Can't. What's true is true. Why? Because I freaking proved it. Right?
Yeah.
I've reverse engineered. This is how this actually works. Can't deny that anymore. Which also means that I can't deny the truth of my situation, who I am. So I've always got to start at truth. But most other people, they get to what? Fake it till they make it. They get to pretend. They get to rely on that external validation, right? Which means you can live a life for a very long time. So taking that step and going, you know what? I'm just going to own the truth. And what the truth is the things inside that your mind keeps telling you over and over again that haven't gone away. Why? Because it's based on patterns over time. So the same thing you hear over and over again, that's what is true at that level of mind. Doesn't matter what the rest of you thinks. That part of you definitely does. And certainly operating as if it does. So just let it be true. You don't have to like it. I don't like it. I definitely did not like it. No, did not like that at all. Right? But fundamentally, you only have to allow it to be true long enough to do something about it. That's it. You only have to let it be true for long enough to do something about it. All right. If you want to go from point A to point B, you got to start at point A. Period. But you're starting at point A. Why? So get the hell away from point A. Right? Fair enough. This stuff ringing a little bit too true. Great. Own it. You don't have to like it. Just own it. Fair enough. Because now you've got some tools and a pathway and a direction to go. That's actually based on the truth of the situation, truth of how things work. Right? And it's really down to a question of like, okay, are you ready? Like, are you willing to go where you really don't want to go? Let things be true. You really don't want to let be true. Because if you are, we can get you where you want to be. Period. It's not even hard. Doesn't take long. But if you're not ready, you need to do something else first. Right? And that's why I said, like, tried everything along the way. Like, everything helps. Everything helps. And sometimes it's just about using the right tool for the right job at the right moment. You're getting started, got a lot of trauma. It's like, this is not the place to dive into. Sorry. Right? You need to do some other work to get here. Right? Whether that's therapy. I've heard good things about internal family systems in terms of a therapeutic technique. Dialectical behavior therapy, also pretty good from what I've heard. Psychedelic assisted therapy, I think it's phenomenal. Why? Because psychedelics give you access to the subconscious mind. So you're actually playing with the truth down there. Right? Now, is it like hypnosis? No. Are there limits to what you can do? Yeah. Is it really a good, effective tool from what I can see about getting you here? Yep. Psychedelics were a huge part of my life, part of my journey. They're 100% why I'm alive. Got a tattoo on my chest says, I am alive. The date is July 29th, 2021, because after my first psychedelic retreat, that was the first time in my life I actually believed that life was worth living. First time I believed it was possible to get what I needed. Not that I had it.
Wow.
But that it was possible. And if it's possible, solution exists. I just got to work long enough and hard enough to find it. And yeah, I was 45, almost 46 years old. And realizing it's like, I had that revelation. I'm sitting there going like, man, this is amazing. I'm so excited. Like I love my life. I can't wait. I'm like, oh crap. This is the first time in my life I actually felt that way. That ain't good. That ain't good at all. Man, I broke down crying for like half an hour. I was like, holy crap. I didn't even realize. I was in that space for that long. Didn't even realize.
There's been a lot of work around psychedelics, and it's been in literature a lot lately. And the question I always have is around what the guidance is like, right? Because there's a big difference between going out and licking a toad or frog or taking or having mushroom and being by and using it as a recreational thing versus being in a situation where there's some guidance. And with hypnosis, I would imagine, just based on our conversation, because you are being guided, so to speak, by someone else who's helping you once you are in that space to know where to look and to what to do, that it feels like it'd be different with psychedelics, that there's not as much room to get that type of guidance when you're using those.
Well, yes, 100%. And what I would say is there's like a couple of different ways that people use psychedelics. The first way is kind of that traditional sort of shamanic thing where you're going down, you're doing a ceremony, take a bunch of stuff and off you go, right? when they talk about psychedelics, set and setting and intention are really, really important, right? Like, what is your intention going in there? Like, what kind of environment are you in, right? Makes a big difference on the quality of your journey. I would say if anybody's looking into this, like, number one, I cannot advise you. I'm just telling you what I've been through and what my opinions are. Not a medical professional. Don't rely on this for advice. Go do your own research, right? Number two, I would never do this stuff alone. Never, right? Having somebody there, you look at any of the forums, they're saying you have to have a trip sitter. You have to have somebody there that knows what's going on to help you through things if things go sideways, right? Because if psychedelics really, I look at them as sacraments rather than medicine, right? Why? Because they're powerful.
Okay. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They're powerful. They're taking you to some really crazy places. Like, you got to treat that sucker with respect because you're playing with some stuff that you can't really understand and control, right? A lot of times what's happening when you're doing psychedelics, especially stuff like, mushrooms, you're talking about LSD, talking about DMT, talking about those kinds of stuff, wachuma, peyote. Those are essentially opening the door to your subconscious mind, letting stuff come out, bringing out truth. And a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm going to show you the thing that's most important for you to deal with right now, the biggest problem you're facing. So if you ain't done a lot of work, that could be real ugly. Right. Oh, this is the biggest, fattest demon you need to deal with right now. Here you go. And it's like, you don't get a choice in where you're going. You really don't. Right. And that could be a rough ride. But in terms of doing psychedelic assisted therapy, typically they're using ketamine, mushrooms, or MDMA. Right. MDMA is beautiful because it's getting you in this beautiful, beautiful space where you're feeling good. You've got a lot more empathy, very much a heart opener. And when you start exploring traumatic events from that perspective, well, you're exploring that traumatic event from a very different emotional space. Right. I've had massive events, results from that, doing stuff like PTSD, things like that. Ketamine assisted therapy, ketamine is actually hypnotic, right? And so you're going in that, and you're working with a therapist while you're in that state as stuff comes up. So it's a bit more interactive, right? And so you can actually do some bigger change work and some reframing during that, right? Very cool. And there's a number of like at-home ketamine therapies treatments for like depression and PTSD and things like that. I've heard really good things for those. Mushrooms are going to be kind of the same thing, right? We're opening up that door, stuff's coming out. And the thing about mushrooms is very much about that connectivity, building those connections in the brain, letting you play with those a lot more than neuroplasticity, right? And then of course you got the, fun recreational side of things. That's a really enjoyable time. And then you've got the microdosing component, right? Where you're taking small doses on a regular basis because, these things do lots of stuff in terms of neuroplasticity.
Yeah. Right.
People using like mushrooms as a therapeutic that are basically replacing a lot of your antidepressants and stuff like that. Why? Because it's got a lot more stuff in there that impact things in a bunch of different ways. But if you're going down this road, like, number one, make sure you have somebody that really knows what they're doing to play with, right? Look into them. Be really, really skeptical, right? Because there's a lot of really bad practitioners out there. The other thing I'd say is everyone that says that you should start with ayahuasca, run. That is a heavy, heavy beast. Don't play with that sucker unless you really know what you're doing. Have yourself sorted out before you do, to the extent that you can. Because if you're going on a ride like that for multiple hours, bringing in all of your baggage, like, I'm sorry, that ain't going to be fun. Right?
Yeah.
And it can really, really mess you up. So that one in particular, I'm probably never going to do. Done DMT in other forms, but I'm never going to do ayahuasca. Just too many things I've heard about it make me shy away. I'm just like, I'm not. That's too high of a risk factor for me. That's me.
So where do people find you, Ryan, if they want to learn more and continue this conversation differently?
Well, I'd say the best place to start is actually my book, Winter Peace, How to End Inner Conflict, Make Success Inevitable. It's available on Amazon and all the different formats. It's basically going to walk you through exactly what I do with everybody I work with, right? It's going to teach you how I kind of view the mind, a different model of that. Teach you what the different emotions are, what the question you're asking, how to play with them differently. It's going to walk you through a bunch of these reframes to kind of help you look at your life, especially when you're younger, from a different perspective. Like, part of the reason we think we're the problem is that we don't have control of anything when we're growing up. We're the only thing we got any agency over. So it's like, okay, I'm going to fix the one thing that I've got any control over, right? Well, that's not the way it works, right? That you're not the problem. You didn't have any other choice, right? And try and get you that place where I try and get all of my clients, where your core belief set is like, number one, there's nothing wrong with me. There never was. Number two, there's nothing to heal. There never was. If emotions aren't pain, if they're just questions, there's no such thing as emotional wounds. You've never been traumatized. That's not how it works. Number three, you're good enough as you are to deserve whatever you choose. Number four, you don't have to prove it to anybody, not even yourself, right? So the extent that I can get you there in a book, I do my best, right? If you're ready to do some deeper work, if you're ready to really dive on in and get this fixed for good, my website is www.ryanthehypnotist.com. I offer free 45-minute consultations. We'll sit down, take a look at your life, what's not working. I'll give you a really good perspective on why things are the way they are, kind of how you got where you did and why other things haven't worked for you. And we can talk about getting to that place I just talked about.
Excellent. Ryan, I have to thank you again for spending time with us. I mean, it's been eye-opening and I've learned so much along the way. I'm definitely going to take some time to learn more about hypnotism and really understand how it helps you have access to the subconscious. And so, we spend a lot of time on the show talking about health and wellness and mental health. And so this is one of those things that we'll probably want to revisit as time goes on. So I'm going to keep all your contact info and maybe get you back and we can talk about it from a different angle.
Outstanding. I'm looking forward to the next conversation.
Incredible. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing.
If you've made it this far, then I have to thank you for your time. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed listening to the discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'd love to hear from you about the show because we're working really hard to bring you great content and the feedback really helps us get better. If you like what you've heard or watched, for those of you who are streaming out on YouTube, then take a split second to give us a thumbs up or a like. It really helps other people like you find the show too. And no one likes to miss out on the good stuff. So go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't have to wonder when or if there's a new episode. And until next time, stay remarkable.